LA County Deputy Medical Examiner Christopher Rogers took the stand today. He told jurors that it was unlikely that Michael Jackson could have administered the lethal dose of propofol himself, and that there was only one man to blame for Jackson's death.
And on what did you base your conclusion that the manner of death was homicide?
Well, there were several issues.
When you say by another person, you mean that Dr. Murray being the other person. When you refer to other person, you mean other than the decedent. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so you're commenting that Dr. Murray admitted to administering the benzodiazepines and the propofol.
That's correct.
Okay.
You would have to assume that Mr. Jackson woke up, although he was, at least to some extent, under the influence of propofol and other sedatives. He was able to somehow administer propofol to himself. The circulation time of the body passed. In other words, if you inject propofol in the leg, it takes a while for it to get to the brain. And then he stops breathing, and all of this takes place in the 2-minute period of time.
Okay. And that scenario does not support self-administration from your perspective. Is that accurate?
Yes, to me that scenario seems less reasonable.
What also stood out to me is he said that it seemed more likely that Murray gave Jackson more propofol than he intended, as a theory as to what happened. What stood out with you with it?
Well, he criticized the fact that he didn't have the proper equipment for that kind of dosing.
Exactly.
Because it has to be infused, which the defense has said time and time again, it has to be infused very slowly. But if you don't have the proper equipment where you can measure it properly, then how do you know for sure that you've given 25
There's several ways you can measure
mgs?
it. You can measure it with that gadget that they have for measuring the balls, and then they have the little switch. You saw how that switch works, right?
Very easy to crank it
increase it or just drip it. So yeah, interesting to see how that might have played into this.
Right.
Also, RJ, the examiner is saying that Michael Jackson was a healthy man. What else stood out to you from his testimony?
Well, by saying he's a healthy man, I'm not really sure if that helps the defense or hurts the defense, because the defense's contention is Michael Jackson played possum, fell asleep, and then infused himself with the extra propofol, which caused this heart arrest. Remember, if you listen to Dr. Rogers, he's saying that if the 25 milliliters of propofol was given to Michael Jackson very slowly, then it would cause a therapeutic effect, which would mean a level of sedation. But the only way 25 milliliters would cause serious damage or danger to the human body is when it's infused all at once. So that's the theory of the case, that Michael Jackson woke up and gave himself this propofol through his catheter.
Yeah, really quickly. The defense pretty much said that with the deputy coroner saying, well, if he gives it all at once, what does that do to the heart? Stops it.
Other anesthesiologists have told us that the first thing that happens is that you stop breathing, and that if you don't attend to the breathing problem, he's going to die in a matter of minutes. So if he didn't have any equipment to take care of that, or if he wasn't present in the room, that would have answered that.
I have a question to you, RJ, about the fact that this testimony this afternoon was incredibly detailed with 0.0169 and 2.6 and milliliters, micrograms. At what point does the jury, because I know I did, nod off and just kind of glaze over, and you know you don't really get the message that the defense is trying to put out.
And the defense might want that confusion.
Maybe.
The confusion actually does help the defense, because if there's a lot of questions out there like how much did he have in the system, or I have no idea what he had in the system, that's reasonable doubt. If you have a question lingering inside of you at the close of all of the evidence, then the defense attorney has to harp on that and say, if you're not sure, then they haven't proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. But what the prosecution will do, and if you saw Walgren's opening statement, he had a brilliant PowerPoint presentation. Trust me, he's going to have diagrams, he's going to have pictures. He might even have motion slideshows to show you how the propofol went from the needle all the way inside Michael Jackson's body.
So like elementary school.
Right,
really,
and they'll make it very simple for the jury to understand it.
Yeah, there'll be no confusion there. All right.
An LAPD detective challenged on the stand today.
As Elisa Fleek removed these items, you never made any notes about what those items that she found in the bag?
More on the tough cross-examination and why the defense grilled the detective about his notes. Next. LAPD detective Scott Smith was one of the 2 investigators who interviewed Dr. Conrad Murray 2 days after Michael Jackson died. Today on the stand, Smith was challenged by defense attorney Ed Chernoff about securing Jackson's home during the investigation.
In your records of your notes that you took of the search there of the closet and the bags on June 29th, you never do mention in your notes that a propofol bottle was found in an IV bag. Is that fair?
That would be fair.
And in fact, you list very specifically the vials and the items that were taken from those bags in your notes. Isn't that right?
As I was told they were, yes.
So after the 25th, I believe your testimony is the house was left open for whoever wanted to come in, right?
It was locked, but with security present.
Well, but there was no lockdown of the house. You had no control over who went through that house after June 25th, correct?
That's correct.
And that's the same for 26th, 27th, and 28th, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, it was the 27th when Dr. Murray said, hey, my medical bags are at that house, right?
Yes, sir.
Did anybody go and lock the house down at that point?
No, sir.
So the mishandling of evidence and the tainting, I guess, of the crime scene is really becoming an issue here. Tell me how that plays into this.
Well, what he's doing right now is establishing it was a sloppy investigation. It wasn't done correctly. There may have been a rush to judgment as far as what Conrad Murray may have done with Michael Jackson. And there's a chain of custody problem. What the chain of custody means is if you're a police officer investigating one of the most famous involuntary manslaughter cases, the least that you could do is solidify and make sure the evidence isn't tampered. They left that house open at Carrollwood. Anybody could go through it. Anybody could access the bathroom where Michael Jackson died. And this is just a couple of days, if not a day or 2 after this incident. So these are good questions because the juror's going to be wondering, yeah, why weren't you locking up the house? Why weren't you making sure that nobody had access to it? So these are the cracks that the defense is looking for reasonable doubt.
But is that a common defense tactic to say police bungled the investigation in some fashion?
Defense attorneys are never happy with police officers' reports, but you don't want to nitpick everything. You want to take the big things, the important things. And if you show that he didn't put something in his notes that was important, or keep the evidence protected properly, those are important things. Not the small things, but of course if there's holes like that, you want to introduce that to the jury.
That's a huge omission, a bottle of propofol and a bag.
Big.
It seems to me, yeah. That's
very big.
Yeah.
But again, to mention the fact that they did not find Conrad Murray's medical bag with the syringe and the 10 bottles of propofol. That was after police had gone through looking for evidence. So it was really curious, which is why earlier in the 10 o'clock news, you heard Chernoff say during that police interview, oh yeah? Meaning, what the heck? How could you?
Right.
Do you have the bag, Conrad? No, I don't have. I left it, as I always do, in the cupboard.
And Murray, they said on that audio, was also very surprised by that. Okay, so tomorrow we have more witnesses for the prosecution. Do you have any idea what we're looking at here, Susan?
There's a gag order, so they're not releasing the witness list for anybody. But the witness list so far has mirrored very, very closely the preliminary. So what is likely to come up is either the rest of the detective, I'm sorry, another detective might testify, and then also an anesthesiologist pharmacologist. And so we might have more of that kind of testimony, which is about blood analysis and bioavailability and 0169.2.6, all these things that we didn't share with the viewers because it's a little boring. But the fact of the matter is that was the bulk of the coroner's testimony, had to do with this analysis of stomach contents, blood, femoral blood versus heart blood. It was quite involving.
RJ, Susan, we thank you both. Prosecution's case is coming to a close. We'll have the defense case possibly this week, maybe tomorrow.
We'll be right back.